do you make of the Bears' problems on defense? And I know you go 19 points. It's not really a problem, but you start looking at some of the issues that they've had, specifically with man coverage. How do you view it?
Yeah, I've been trying to process that even in the last couple hours since hearing Ben Johnson speak today on his Zoom call with reporters, and my co-host Adam John sort of had a similar take this morning. I don't think it's a wrong take in that, hey, look, they held him to 19 points. We all made our predictions this week, and I'm sure if all of us had, them scoring the Lions scoring 19, we all would have said the Bears win the game, right? And we probably did. I know I had the Lions scoring 20, and the offense didn't hold up its end of the bargain and they lost. So and since Ben Johnson is in charge of the offense, I understand where he's coming from on that and putting it more on the offense. On the other hand, they gave up 42 points last week against the 49ers. And it just seems like here's really what my issue is. And it became an issue against the Packers in the second game. So you're either going to play more aggressively defensively, take more chances, play man-to-man coverage, and you're gambling right now because the speed on this defense, and especially in the secondary right now, and even with the linebackers, guys being banged up, whatever it is, it's just not good enough to hang with some of these playmakers. You saw it in the first game against the Packers when you couldn't hang with Christian Watson in one-on-one coverage. You couldn't hang with Bo Melton in one-on-one coverage. So it's the second game they sit back and they play more zone and they try to keep things in front of them, and it works. They keep the Packers out of the end zone. They hold them 0-5 in the red zone, and that's great. Offense didn't have the ball, right? So it really puts the pressure on the offense to not go 3 and out. And I know that's where Ben's coming from. Look, we got to take advantage of the possessions we have, the plays we have, and we got to make the most of them. So when you go 3 and out, you don't get first downs, you don't score. The offense has to do its job too. I'm just looking at this defense right now, and I'm finding it hard to believe that it's just okay to say, all right, 19 points. We give up 400 yards of offense, giving up way too many plays. Last 3 games, you've had 72 plays, and 73 plays on defense. That's a lot of plays for a lot of guys who are banged up, not 100% right now. I'm struggling with some of the personnel choices, which maybe we can get into a little bit, especially when you consider how much they've been on the field. So I can buy the idea that, yeah, you held them to 19 points. I just don't know how sustainable this is if you really expect to win 4 games in a row here in the playoffs against really good teams.
All right, let's talk about some of those personnel choices, specifically with the back 7. Jalen Jones was the nickel after C.J. Gardner-Johnson went out, and I would suspect that he's out next week. And I know that Kyler Gordon coming back, well, quote, that's the hope, unquote. But Elijah Hicks played, Jonathan Owens played, not one snap for Tyrique Stevenson. What's going on with Tyrique Stevenson, and is that someone they ought to consider over Nahshon Wright?
Yeah, this is the first time all year I really heard an answer from Ben Johnson on a Monday that I couldn't really get on board with, or I'm still just trying to, I'm trying to figure it out. So he basically said, he's asked, why did Tyrique Stevenson not play? I mean, he didn't play, which is stunning. I mean, this is your 2nd round pick who got off to a rough start earlier this year, then bounced back, and for a couple weeks there, looked like one of the best corners in the league. Then he got banged up, and I think he's been dealing with stuff, but he hasn't been on the injury report lately. To see him not play at all yesterday was very confusing. Ben Johnson said today they felt like Jalen Johnson and Nahshon Wright were, gave them basically the best opportunity to have success defensively. Now, the positive way to look at that is that I think is an indication that they're trusting Jalen Johnson to handle more of the snap load, which is what you want going in the playoffs. I think they've been kind of working towards this. He played 99% of the snaps. I think he only missed 1. That in itself is a good trend. On the other hand, he still doesn't look like he's running 100%. He doesn't look 100%. And when you're on the field for that many plays and you're seeing, it's not just Jalen Johnson. Nahshon Wright got exposed a couple times too, trying to run with these guys with the speed. I just, that's fine if that was your plan going in and you felt optimistic, but I'm just wondering where the in-game adjustments are. Halfway through that game, with the amount of snaps that are on the field, you don't think it's a good idea to change your plan a little bit and get Tyrique in there for a series? I don't. there seems like there's more to that story to me. I just didn't find that answer today fulfilling, considering how the game played out. And this is something I've praised. I spent half the season praising Dennis Allen for these adjustments from week to week, in-game adjustments. And as the last couple of weeks, I just haven't seen enough of it. And I'm continuing to wonder why, when you're on the field this much, why Tyrique Stevenson doesn't get in there. And with the linebackers, DeMarco Jackson doesn't play more. He only had 12 snaps. And like a week before, not sure he got on the field at all defensively. So it's some of the stuff's been very confusing the last few weeks.
Well, Tyrique's fascinating, and we'll see what comes out this week. DeMarco Jackson did play 12 snaps. I think that was with the other two backers, so they went three backers a little bit. Would they ever give DeMarco snaps over TJ Edwards?
I mean, based on what we've seen so far, I think the answer is no. I think they trust Tremaine Edmonds, TJ Edwards. I think Ben fairly said today that he felt like the linebackers played better than they did against the 49ers. I also think that was a pretty low bar.
Yeah.
And I happened to host a show on Mondays with Lance Briggs, who played linebacker at a pretty high level for the Chicago Bears. I know you know that. And, he has this saying where it's like, if you just run to the ball for the entire game as a linebacker, you should get 10 tackles. Like that. It should just be on the stat sheet sort of automatically. If you're running the ball every snap, especially if you get 73 plays, I think those linebackers technically get 71, then you should. And then what did I think Edwards ended up with 4? I don't have it in front of me right now. But it wasn't enough is the point. And so I don't think that those guys are necessarily playing at the level you want them to going in the season. I also don't think either of them is 100%. So to answer your question, why don't you get DeMarco Jackson on the field more? Maybe rotate, come up with something. I mean, this status quo thing right now with the defense, it doesn't feel like it's going to be good enough over 4 straight weeks here in the postseason.
It's kind of weird because Ben went on a little bit of a tirade about other teams and what they choose to do and what the Bears choose to do.
Yeah.
But you could look at what the Bears did yesterday and go, that's got a real preseason look to it, where maybe the offense didn't show a lot of shifts and motions because they didn't want to show more stuff to the Packers, even though the Packers have got 2 games of tape on the Bears doing shifts and motions. And then defensively, were you actually just saying who can play man? And so you did more man that you maybe would against another team. It was a very strange game in like kind of the little leaks that kind of like, well, they might have been doing this and they might have been doing that. I'm not sure how to judge it other than what we actually saw on the field, but it does scare me a little bit that might have been what they were doing, and maybe that's what led to there not being a lot of juice with this team early on in the game.
Yeah, and it kind of reminds me of sometimes Ben's decision-making with the clock, where he's trying to thread the needle a little bit in some of these end-of-half, end-of-game situations where he's trying to let the clock bleed down and still get points, and then sometimes it costs them, like it did in the end of the first half, where they burn too much clock and they get no points. I think you might be onto something there, Lawrence, that they were, yes, we're going to play our starters. This is our identity. We want to go in the playoffs, and we feel like we can do that, win the game, feel good about ourselves, and then also, maybe not show as much as we want to. Hey, maybe that's why Tyrique Stevenson played 0 snaps. Maybe you're just trying to rest him up to play more in the playoffs. I don't know, because that answer just didn't really satisfy me. So I'm just trying to come up with something. But I do think there's a little bit of that. And Ben did confirm today that was essentially what he meant by simplifying the offensive game plan, that it was just fewer motions. And what's alarming though, is he also said fewer shifts and motions. He also said they had 6 mental errors on their first 11 plays.
Wow.
Which is a lot, considering that's your script. Like those are the plays you're walking through and you're running all week. So maybe, I don't know if that somehow threw them off, but all of a sudden they reverted back to that team earlier in the season that was having all kinds of pre-snap issues. I went back and watched those 11 plays. The mental errors are not necessarily extremely obvious. I think there was one play where Loveland kind of came out, and I think he went to block the wrong guy because he seemingly went to go double team someone when the linebacker was unblocked completely. So I think it's just little stuff like that, specifically with the protections up front or the blocking assignments.
Yeah.
But it's not good. You can't have 6 mental errors on 11 plays when you're trying to simplify the offense at the same time.
Look, Adam Hoge from CHGO is here. Hoge and Johns do a great job over there, and have done a great job together for a long time. See, here's the thing. When you approach the game the way that you guys just talked about, and then you end up being that disorganized and that ugly and coming out, like Caleb said, we came out flat, then you have failed as a coach. Like, you had a bad week as a coach. It's just a week. It's just a game. You've been a coaching superstar all year long, and now it's the playoffs. But now I get why you want to turn the page so damn fast, because you're a little embarrassed. That's a rough approach that led to this. And your guy, Adam Johns, was in the locker room. They were down afterwards, weren't they? He said so.
Yeah, and I think based on putting a couple pieces of the puzzle together, based on how John's explained it in the locker room, what the scene was like, what we heard from Ben afterwards, where he said in his press conference, like, he challenged those guys, he challenged especially the offense, and then some of the things I've heard too in the last 24 hours. I think that was I think he really challenged. I think he really challenged the team post game. I think that's okay. Like, as a head coach, you gotta push some buttons. You gotta know when to push them. I don't think yesterday was acceptable, and it's probably the right time to say, okay, we're either all in here. It's a new season. This is the postseason, or you're not. And so I think that was the message. He was asked about that today, about how the players received that. I think the direct quote was fairly well, or he felt like it. So here's the cool thing is maybe over the last 17 minutes or so that we've been talking, maybe it seems like a overreaction or negative reaction to yesterday. They are going in the playoffs. This is a winnable game against a team they've already beat this season. I think they feel like they could have beaten them twice. I think the Packers probably feel like they should have 2 wins over the Bears too. But we're going to learn a lot about Ben Johnson this week, and I think I'm excited for it, because I'm excited to see how the team responds. Certainly if you come out flat in a playoff game against the Packers, that would be alarming. I'm not excusing it yesterday, but I sort of get it. Like, anytime there's an argument to be made that you could actually sit your starters, all right, the game doesn't matter a ton. This week matters a ton. They're going to come out. The atmosphere at Soldier Field is going to be way different. So I don't think coming out flat will be a problem. And maybe this is a little bit of a spin zone, but the fact that they shortened the week by having to play Saturday night, it doesn't help you from a rest and recovery standpoint, especially when you see CJ Gardner-Johnson go out and Cole Kmet maybe not finish the game. That being said, I don't think this was a week where you necessarily wanted an extra 24 hours to dwell over what happened. Everybody can come back in the building tomorrow on Tuesday, and it's really Wednesday. So you can speed forward. Everybody should be motivated to go in there and be like, all right, let's move on to this playoff game. We'll get the corrections in. Everybody should be motivated, and I think they'll respond to Ben Johnson's challenge well. Now we'll get to see what it all looks like on Saturday night. We'll see what kind of adjustments both Ben Johnson and Dennis Allen make too in a huge moment. And either go really well, or we'll all be panicking on Sunday morning. But it should be fun either way.
This is kind of a zombie Packers team, since you lose Micah, and that clearly makes you different. But like, the last month of Packers football has not been enjoyable. What is there still to worry about if you're the Bears?
Well, to me, the biggest worry is that they did what they should have done and rested their starters, and they basically got a bye week, and they got an extra day on that front end too, because they played on Saturday the week prior. To your point, though, they've really looked like a shell of themselves, as bad as it's maybe looked for the Bears lately. It's been way worse for the Packers. Their injuries have been way worse. The way they've played, I mean, they got ran over by that Ravens team, and that's a Ravens team that really all season hasn't been right. Really never found a consistent running game. Never really leaned on Derrick Henry. They probably should have all season. Well, in that game, it certainly looked easy. So if you're looking for reasons for optimism, the Bears have run the ball well against the Packers this year. And I think, should be able to set the tone on the ground as long as everybody shows up and is in the right mindset and follows their blocking assignments, and there are no mental errors, or at least they limit those mental errors. I think the way you look at what this Packers defense is right now, you should be able to run the ball against them. And if you do that, then maybe you can control the clock better than you did in the last meeting against them when they really controlled the clock for the most of the entire first half. But yeah, they've lost 4 games in a row. You don't really count yesterday's because they weren't trying, but it's still as bad as it's been for the Bears. It's been way worse for the Packers. And I understand. I think the line's right where it should be. It's essentially a pick 'em, but on paper, I feel like the Bears should be the team that wins this one, especially at home.
Adam Hoge does an incredible job on the Hoge and Johns podcast and all the work over at CHGO, and he's nice enough to join us, and we are appreciative of it. Sir, thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys. Have a great week.
Appreciate it, Adam.